So I have a question for you. Why is it that all of a sudden you have, as a nation, lost your ability to dream, to imagine a more hopeful future? Why is it that there is so much bitterness, so much hatred? Why is it that you tear down and destroy more than you actually build up and reimagine? What do you think has caused that? What is the main contributor to that? You see, whenever I look around on both sides, left and right, one of the things I see the most is a bitterness. There's bitterness. There's a hatred, a distrust, a closed-mindedness, a refusal to work together, a loss of hope, a loss of vision, and a desire to destroy, not build up. What do you think causes that? Well, one thing I can tell you that has contributed to it is hyperpoliticization. And the selfish desires of people who want power and are willing to corrupt, destroy, manipulate, confuse others in order to obtain that power, that influence, and that control. And that's in public and private sectors. And it goes all the way down around the seven spheres into many people's individual lives, in their own homes, in their own neighborhoods, in their own towns and cities, states, and beyond. Now, we can blame a lot of things on the impacts of COVID-19 and the crisis. However, the one thing that is the most impactful, that just amplified, right? That just amplified what was already present, something that was latent, something that had been occurring for a long time, something that had been planted and being planted in this country for a long time. I've been talking a lot about this because it's really been on my mind, and that is the loss of story, a collective story, a collective meaning. It's something that's been building for a long time, and I believe it really started during the Cold War and in the 60s and came to full fury. Can't even talk. Sorry. It came to fruition in this generation, presently in leadership, that have been there for a while, and I'm not going to blame everything on them because it's surely not all their fault. But I will say that there is an impact, because what we now have is we now have an attempt to basically rewind America as it's being deconstructed, dismantled, and made desolate. So I want you to consider why that is and what has actually happened, and how that impacts everybody for the future. I want you to also consider both sides, both wings, left and right, and how each side has contributed to that in their own way, and how each wing, the further you go out to the tips, are controlled by fear, confusion, bitterness, uncertainty, confusion, and in many cases, pride and greed. So when you don't have an authentic, real story, and you don't have a hopeful one, what fills that vacuum is counterfeits, darkness, and a dystopian, narcissistic, and nihilistic phantom. A phantom of authenticity, genuineness, a phantom of the real, a shadow of the real. And that is, a sense, what has overshadowed the country in its in this darkness that is over us. It is stolen hope, joy, the ability to think properly, the ability to dream, to be creative, and a sense of freedom and liberty in many people, and in most of the nation, a sense of distrust, both in their fellow neighbors, their fellow citizens, and the institutions that make this country, in the public and private sectors alike. So I tell you that in that no matter which side I talk to, I find that people are actually closer than they ever realized, both in their negativity and in their positivity. There's more agreement. Now you can say the rise of social media and weaponized information at nanoscales has contributed to it, and it has. But nothing has contributed to it more than not having a vision for the country that involves everybody and the politicalization of absolutely everything here. So I want you to consider that, and I'm going to ask a few more questions here in just a bit. So let me turn to those of you on the right side, especially those of you who are religious, people of faith, my brothers and sisters, my Christian brothers and sisters on that side. Let me ask you a question. Why is it so much I see from you, and so much of your message, your story, isn't one of hope, of salvation, of truth and love, bringing about justice and mercy from humble and contrite hearts in Christ Jesus, and the freedom and liberty that faith and the tenets of our faith give us in the Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit? Why is that? Why is it when you were told you were not given a spirit of fear nor of confusion, but of peace, love, power, and a sound mind? Yet, so much of what I hear, I see among you is fear and confusion, a lack of a sound mind, a lack of love for one another and for those that are not yet in the kingdom. And a unwillingness to be peacemakers, unifiers, and examples of what we say we believe. Why do you think that is? I'm asking you very seriously. I get being perplexed. I get many things that can cause all these things, but when you're offering no alternative to the secularist view of the world, no hope, no vision, no desire to actually solve the problems, to work together, to look out for one another, to transform your communities, right? Using your gifts and talents to example the truth of the gospel in action. What do you think's going to happen? You think you're going to transform the culture? Or do you think the culture is going to actually go the other direction because what you're doing is pushing them away? That you care more about the politics, the power, and the prosperity than you do the gospel and your love supposedly for Jesus. Do you love him? Do you know him? I mean, I'm asking you these things not to condemn you. I'm provoking thought for a reason. Because so much of what I hear, particularly out of the right side, is so absolutely and totally apocalyptic. Everybody's expecting the rapture any moment now, right? Well, if you really believe that, shouldn't you have enough love and care for your brothers and sisters to be looking out for them, and for those that may not be but are lost? Do you not care about them? To reach out to them in love and in truth, exampled? And why is it so many of your ministries that focus on that part? If you really believe you're about to be raptured out of here, why are you making so much damn money? After all, you're not going to be able to take it with you. So help me understand what your reasoning is. Now I want to switch to the other side. Those of you on the left. I know a lot of you care about others, but there's also many of you who pretend to care, and you're a facsimile of the real. And not only is your love really codependency, which is disease, sickness, but you embolden, actually are complicit with and compliant with evil. You actually promote it. You promote things that are destructive in our society, and you offer a different flavor of an apocalyptic view. It's just a secularist, dystopian view based upon being deceived in your ignorance or intent, taking things like climate change out of context, or not even knowing what the original context is, and then also waging culture war against the other side. While you're talking about love and tolerance, you're actually displaying hatred and intolerance towards anybody who doesn't agree with you. The future you offer is dystopian as much as it is destructive, and is just a mirror of the other side in its extreme. So why should anybody listen to you? Again, I'm asking these as serious questions. What is your actual response to that? What do you think? Make your case. Because if you can't make a case on that, that should tell you something. Because where I'm sitting, I'm getting tired of seeing this polarity play out in this country. and seeing both sides completely enslaved to fear, confusion, right? Bitterness, unforgiveness, hatred, right? A lack of a vision for the future, lack of hope. And both sides are destructive in their own ways. One may be passive aggressive, the other may be more actively so. But still, it achieves the same things. What do you think is going to happen to your country? And how do you know that either one of you are right? Maybe you're both wrong. Maybe you have some things correct, but overall, both of you are in error. How do you know? You absolutely sure? Because I've looked at a lot of the things that both sides believe. I actually test stuff and look myself, and I can tell you, there are gaps I could drive 18-wheelers sideways through. And what you say you believe. And in how it works out in the real world. And how it lines up from a spiritual perspective. So what happened to you? What caused you to give up on truth in love, actual justice and mercy? What caused you? What lie did you accept? What lack of due diligence did you not do? Why did you not do any due diligence? What lack of investigation and seeking the truth? You see, we have a lot of outward forms of religion, a lot of outward forms of ideology here. But when you really sit down and talk to some people and you really question them and you ask them hard questions, you find out whether they actually care about truth by how they react to you. If they coil up like a snake, they don't care about truth. They're a facsimile of the real. Now, there are things on both sides that I could call out all day long. And there are things on both sides I can say, in their proper context, actually, I agree with. And when I test it, and bring it together into a comprehensive picture, it actually makes sense. But right now, where we're at as a nation, is you are destroying one another and you're trampling everybody that refuses to be in your polarities. And what that tells me is that not only do you not care about the truth, or you're deceived by a lie, and you think it's truth, it is that you're enslaved to your shadows in fear and confusion. Right? And you're bitter because of unforgiveness. And that's metastasizing into a self-destructive society. It's actually creating the very thing you fear most. And for those of you that are my brothers and sisters on both sides, why the hell do you think you're here? If this was just about you being saved and going to heaven, then as soon as you said the sinner's prayer, you dematerialize and wind up standing before the Lord in paradise. There's obviously a reason why you're here. And it's not just to sit in a bunker. It's to make a difference in this world and in the lives of other people and in the societies that you are in. Not tear it apart. Not point fingers at one another. Last time I checked, Satan was the accuser of the faithful. You see, I've started pointing back at both sides. At the same time, I'm asking questions and offering a hand, an open hand, right, for each side to come together. You both have lost your storylines, both sides. You both have devolved into fear factories, confusion factories. And from a faith perspective point of view, that's not at all what the gospel of the kingdom is about. But it is what Jesus warned about it would be like at the end of the age. Now let's talk about that phrase, the end of the age, right? Because both sides have their own apocalyptic, eschatological realities, secular and religious versions. The end of the age is not the end of the world. The end of the age is the end of the age of it being ruled by evil. So why then are you both contributing to it by not actually doing what you're called to do? It seems to me that you like the old age, the age of darkness, destruction, right? Confusion and fear, tyranny, over the age to come, which is the truth and love, which brings about authentic justice and mercy from humble and contrite hearts, and brings about vision to see what you couldn't see previously in the darkness of your times and in your own lives. You see why I ask these questions this way? I'm not afraid to ask hard questions. And for good reason. I've been doing it since I was a child. I think some of you haven't asked enough questions, or you've not asked the right questions, because I think many of you don't care. Because I think you've become so enamored with what you think you know, and so enslaved to the shadows of the real, that you find it difficult to let go of your pride, even though you're ruled by fear and confusion. And that saddens me, because that means you're going to have a lot of loss. Not just here, but in the world to come, in the age to come. I mean, I look at your country, and I look at how much money your government has spent. And a good tell on where that money's gone or how it's been used is by what's still broken, what's not been fixed, and how the society is that much more corrupted and broken as it is right now. You haven't moved on past that. You haven't fixed any of these problems. So if you're creating more problems, you're creating more complexity. And if you're spending all this money, well, where's it all going? Right? Because all this money is supposed to build a new America, right? Right? So where's your vision? Huh? Where's your vision for the country on either side? You see, I'm like an X-ray machine. And I don't like what I'm seeing the further out I go on either side. And the evidence is mounting up. It goes back to what I was talking about. You have executed your childlikeness and replaced it with childishness and called it adulthood. Called it practical. Called it good. It is not. It is degeneracy. It is entropy. And it is self-deception. It is lacking of light. And is not sound in mind, meaning that it's made of fear and confusion. And wherever you find those two things, you find lots of corruption. So tell me, why don't you fix anything anymore? Why is it that when I go through your cities, they're a wreck? Your infrastructure is terrible. Your streets are broken up. Third world nations have some better infrastructure than you have. And why is it that everywhere I go, I see violence? I see lawlessness. I see hopelessness. I see addiction. But you spend a lot of money, so why don't you actually pull out the books and let's see exactly where all that money's gone? Because I think it's about time you have some accountability financially on what you've done with the trillions of dollars that you've spent. So maybe we need a year of total and absolute transparency. Micros to macros and macros to micros. And I'm not talking with the IRS. I'm talking about everything and everybody, starting with the government, starting with the financial sector. And those that have the most. Because those who have the most wealth, power, influence, right, control, you're the leaders of this society. So you should lead the rest of the country by being transparent with what you've done with all the money. So one, tell me what your vision is. Those of you that have that power. Two, tell me where all the money has gone that you've spent supposedly doing your vision, right? Making America great again or building back better. Prove it. Don't tell me, show me. Just like the Missouri state motto, show me. Because I've spent my life looking at how things can be done, how people can work together. And what I found is that at every step, this country and the people in it and the leadership simply don't want to do that. So why should we have a republic if it's this broken, this completely dysfunctional, and it's not even upholding what it's supposed to be by its own words, its own documents? What happened to the separation of powers and the checks and balances? What happened to accountability all the way down to the local levels? Openness and transparency. You see, what I see is I see absolute and total fabrication, lies, manipulation. I see a smoke screen. I see a mirage. That's how I see you. So change my mind. Tell me what your actual story is before I have to actually tell everybody what your fake one actually is. Which you're doing for me because people are no longer believing in this. What is your vision for the country? What is it based upon? And why is it that all this money goes disappearing and the same people are in the same positions decade after decade in Washington all the way down to local levels? You want to base things on bloodlines again? Do you? Well, if we're going to do that, I could claim something more than all of you. You see, I don't base things based on that. Those things are temporary. I base things upon the inside out. So think about it as it is for people, so too it is for nations.